Okay, so we are going to go through handling missing angles when we have variables involved. So, angle equations is the focus that we're working on. Okay, so our first example, we're going to go ahead and fill in the angle measurements onto our picture here. So my first angle measurement is 40 degrees. So add this in. And then this angle will be 2x plus 10. So what we have here is we have two angles labeled. One has a variable. And what you would be asked to do, you would be asked to find the value of x, usually would be what it is. Okay. All we're going to do first, though, all of these examples, we're just going to go through and we're going to write the equation. So what equation could I create that would help me figure out what x is? And I could actually put little degree symbols here. Okay. So if we think about this for a second, ignoring the fact that there's x's and all that, if we look at these two angles, what do we know about these two angles? Hopefully you said they're vertical angles and they're congruent. So that means this angle right here is congruent to this angle right here. So 40 is going to be congruent or equal to 2x plus 10, right? These measurements should be equal. So underneath your picture here, your illustration, go ahead and write that equation. Since this angle equals this angle here equals this angle here, I just write that out using math. All right, next one. We have a right angle here. Go ahead and label this first one 50 degrees plus x degrees. And the smaller angle is 20 degrees. So label those two angles. Now if we look at our large angle here, it's a right angle. Right angles add up to 90 degrees, right? So if I look at my measurements here, this angle combined with this angle must equal 90 degrees, right? So 50 degrees plus x degrees plus 20 degrees should equal 90 degrees, right? That's all we're doing for now. Right now, all we're doing is writing the equations for how we could figure out these measurements and what x equals. Let's look at another. So here I've got 12 plus x. And right down here I have a 110. So make sure that you fill in these two spots. All right, so now we've got to look at our angles here. I've got this angle, and I've got this angle. And if you notice, if I were to pick up this little section and put it on top of this section, what you would have is 12 degrees plus x degrees equaling 110 degrees because these are congruent angles. I mean, not congruent, corresponding angles. This angle and this angle are congruent because they're in the same exact position. They're matching. They're corresponding. So 12 plus x, whatever degree this equals, would actually be 110. All right, next one, number 5, or I guess 4. Okay, here we've got 3x plus 1. Here we have 2x plus 10 degrees. Okay, so you may be thinking, like, there's a lot going on here. They both have x's. They're like, looks a little more complicated. But all we're worrying about right now is getting an equation that eventually will help us come up with the x's and the values of everything. But if we look here, this angle and this angle are vertical angles. They're across from each other. So if they're across from each other, guess what that means? That they're equal. So for an equation, I could say 3x plus 1 equals 2x plus 10. Because my two angles should equal each other, I can set my measurements equal to each other. Those should be degree symbols. Doing a horrible job. Right, number 6, or number 5, we have 8x degrees here. And 2x plus 10 degrees here. Let me try that again. Okay. All right, so now when we look at this angle and this angle here, there's no relationship between these two. There's a relationship between this angle and this angle. Okay. This angle right here is corresponding to this angle. Okay, so where my blue angle marks are, those are all congruent. So I don't have a direct connection between these two measurements, between 8x and 2x plus 10. But I do know that if this angle is 8x, shouldn't this angle also be 8x degrees, right? And let me erase here. And if I look here, I have a straight line. And if I have two angles that add up to a straight line, guess how many degrees they add up to? They add up to 180. So 8x plus 2x plus 10 should equal 180 degrees, right? Okay, so we did, it was a little bit more complicated there, but nothing that you've done this process before of missing angles. It's just that now instead of giving you numbers, there are variables involved. But the process is still the same. And our last one, we've got 5x degrees here and 3x degrees plus 40 degrees here. So we've got vertical angles, which means they're across from each other, which also means they're congruent. Okay, a little reminder here, we have an obtuse angle and another obtuse angle. It's a clue that they're going to be equal, especially when it's two lines intersecting. So 5x equals 3x degrees plus 40 degrees. So that's our first step. The first step in getting any of these done is to figure out what the equation is in the first place.